Doug Bushon, Orange and Blue News podcast. And in case you don't know, there's a face behind the NCAA transfer portal feed on the X platform. His name is Jacey Zembal. His life is pretty complicated right now as the portal continues to populate with thousands of kids. And follow him at Rivals Portal, and he's constantly reposting all the kids that are entering the portal. And Jacey, thanks a lot for coming on and to talk to us about some Illinois targets in the portal. And then before we get to that, and I'm going to ask you about Jake Davis, who they got a commitment from Mercer, and then some kids that they're tracking. But before that, tell us a little bit about your life since March 18th when the portal opened and then it started populating with all these kids.
Yeah, the first 2 days of the portal were pretty intense. I was like, I was amazed, but now it's kind of settled into a flow where thankfully most of the action stops around 6:30 each night Eastern time, and most guys it's pretty quiet on Saturdays and Sundays. But way it works, what's fascinating with the portal is I usually see about 15 to 20 guys each day that are either a former star high school player who's in the portal that didn't work out at whatever school they were at, or B, a very good college player. And what I try to do with the process is try to watch some film on each one. I'm not going to pretend to say that I know every player's game, because I don't, but it's like a snapshot, just kind of feel for what they look like, how the ball comes off their hands, what are they physically, what they look like athletically. One of the nice things is, there's usually a very distinct look to what a mid-major or a low major player looks like and what a high major player looks like. And most of these guys that are doing well, that entered the portal from smaller schools, they may not have been a high major target coming out of high school. They may not have looked like it their freshman or sophomore years. But after a few years of college and a strength and conditioning program, it's kind of crazy when you look at it. It's like Alabama made the Final Four, and they have a North Dakota State standout at center. They have Mark Sears, who's really good at point guard, who went to Ohio. Before he got hurt, Latrell Whitesell was from Cal State Fullerton. And, Aaron Estrada went to Hofstra and a couple other schools before he went to Hofstra. So, it's proven that you could take some of these guys, put them together and make it work. And, obviously Illinois had their fair share of good transfers and would not have had the year they had this year if not for those guys. So, that's kind of like the process. But it is a balance though. Like you probably watched them more than I did, yes, this past year. But Scotty Middleton was a very good high school player, and he shot 45% from three-point land at Ohio State, but did not play a lot, and he enters the portal. And Jamie Kaiser is kind of like in the same boat at Maryland. These were both guys that are top 65 players, coming out of high school, but, for whatever reasons, they have decided to leave after their first year of college.
It seems like, JC, you got kids moving in opposite directions and kind of replacing each other. You got kids moving down who didn't look like they had an opportunity to play at high major level, and then you got kids moving up from mid major to high major. Then you got some lateral movements too, but it seems like they're going in opposite directions and just kind of replacing each other. But and one of the consequences we talked about Illinois, one of the consequences of building your roster with upperclassmen transfers is you get into a cycle where you have to start doing it every year, and you're building your roster in April like Brad Underwood is going to be doing, and they got one kid already, Jake Davis from Mercer, and a little bit surprising when his name popped up maybe a week ago, as trending towards Illinois, just because he only scored 9 points a game in the Southern Conference at Mercer. But what have you seen from his skill set on film, and how do you like the fit?
I mean, he clearly can shoot, and that I'm sure that's why they brought him in. The other nice thing is something you just kind of said. He'll have 3 years of eligibility left, correct? So, it brings a little continuity, and that's why it's part of the balancing act where some of the freshmen like Middleton, Kaiser, Jake Davis, they'll have 3 years in theory if it works out and they don't transfer again, to blossom at their school. I think Goody is probably the blueprint, right? I mean, he can do basically the same type of things that Goody has done, and now they have somebody that plays that role for the next 3 years. And like you said, they targeted him pretty quick. They're one thing you'll see in the portal, wings are not hard to find. It's point guards and centers. That's where the money is going to be made. That's where, schools can make a difference. Not as many point guards, not as many centers. There are all kinds of stretch fours or small ball fours. There are all kinds of wings. There are all kinds of combo guards. But obviously ones who can stroke, who could really shoot, there's always a place for those guys.
Illinois is looking for wings. They lose Terrence Shannon Jr. and Marcus Domask, a couple of all Big Ten performers this year. So they want a top level scorer, a big wing, and one of the big names in the portal, one of the big fish is AJ Storr from Wisconsin. And it's kind of interesting that there's a lot of debate among fans about Storr for various reasons. He's attended several different schools in a short amount of time, but a really talented, physically gifted kid. Are you hearing anything about Storr as far as what schools he might be looking at?
Not so much schools. I mean, in AJ's case, I could joke. I'm old enough to remember when he was committed to Illinois, but when you bounce around as much as he has, in a way, it's almost like it's a hired gun. So my guess is whatever schools he ends up looking at, it's in that role. He plays like a guy who could score 15 to 20 a game. Everything about him is bouncing around from school to school to school to school. Makes you wonder, what will ever, kind of make him happy. I always wonder what happens to guys when they're finished with their college careers and they look around and like, who are my great friends that I've had for 3-4 years? Well, it's a little tougher when you go to multiple schools in multiple years. So, but there's no question he can score. He has a college-ready body. He's a mature player. I wouldn't say he's like a combine type kid in terms of athleticism. He's not gonna, wow you in the 40-yard dash or the vertical jump, but he just knows how to put the ball in the basket. And I always weigh heavily guys who have proven that they can produce at the highest level. And he showed that at Wisconsin, a little bit at St. John's, but definitely showed at Wisconsin that he could produce at the highest level. And that's why he will be big time in demand.
Guys like AJ Storr who have moved around and it's probably going to be costly when it comes to NIL money. He's one of the reasons some of these programs are hiring general managers just to figure things out. Is a kid worth what your NIL collective is gonna pay him? And I think that's something they have to balance with AJ Storr because they do have more than one spot to fill. There's three scholarships open now. They probably expect one or two more to pop open here as kids decide what they're going to do. But the AJ Storr's, he's going to come with a little bit of baggage and he's going to come at a pretty high price, I think. And you talked about point guards. Point guards are definitely something that Illinois wants. They have a kid coming in, Jace Butler, who they like as a point guard, but do you want to hand the keys to a true freshman? And I don't think they want to do that. So they're looking at guards in the portal, and one of them is Dante Maddox Jr. from Toledo, a kid who's getting a lot of high major interest.
Yeah, Maddox is interesting. I don't know if I would call him a pure point guard, and I don't know if Illinois is looking at him as a point, but he does have the ball in his hands. Now, what makes Maddox, he has a very mature build. He has a very strong, thick lower body. He has what I call he plays with an edge. One of the games I watched with him is they played App State to 2 overtimes, and they wanted him to have the ball in his hands to try to make the game-winning shot, both in the end of the regulation and then at the end of the first overtime. Now, he didn't make those shots, but I appreciate guys who aren't afraid of that moment. That tells me something, that they looked for him twice to try to win the game. Another one kind of built like Store a little bit, not as tall, but just very solidly built, mature game. He's an adult, I call it the adult in the room. Maybe not a wow guy athletically. He's not going to be like a highlight guy, but he can make tough shots. And he, like I said, there's a certain edge about him. And, one of the things I appreciate with guys like him is, all they have done at Toledo is win regular season MAC titles. That's all they do. I think it was like 4 years in a row. And I'm not saying he was on all four of them, but, to win that league is tough. Like everybody, it always feels like all the MAC schools kind of start from the same place, and it's always a battle to see which one. And this year, obviously Akron went with John Gross, won the title in the tournament. But in terms of regular season success, Toledo's won 4 times in a row. So that tells you how much of a winner Maddox has been a part of.
Some coaches are chasing stars, and a lot of the fans are interested in the kids that had the high star rankings coming out of high school. Like an Omaha Ballou from Iowa State. People are wondering what happened to him. He went there and didn't get to play. Another one, Cody Booth, who did get to play, but a highly ranked kid coming out of high school. He jumped in the portal, I think, yesterday or today from Notre Dame. What does he bring to the court? We were talking about him just before we began the podcast. And it seems like a kid with a high ceiling, but hasn't formed up to his ranking quite yet.
Yeah, he's probably about 6'9", 6'10", but he's also very skinny. His father was also very skinny, but a very great gifted shot blocker at Penn State, Calvin Booth, who I believe is an NBA executive right now. So his son is very different, though, in terms of what he does on offense. Calvin was definitely inside. His son likes to float out to the perimeter. He has legit three-point range. His shining moment this year is I think he had 17 against a very good defensive Virginia squad. And he was active. He hit some threes. He's just a very finesse. I'm trying to think what the right word is. Sometimes I wondered if the coaches at Notre Dame were a little frustrated with his intensity at times, but that's what happens with freshman big men. They're not physically ready yet to get thrown into the fray. There was one game, I think, where they played Miami where Micah Shrewsbury, the coach, just basically benched everybody, or at least the front court, because he just
did a Bobby Knight.
Yeah, he just couldn't believe, he didn't like what he was watching inside. And I'm like, well, okay. The guys like Booth and the center who transferred in from Penn State, I'm sure that got their attention. But yeah, he's definitely a guy who 2-3 years from now could be a really dynamic inside outside forward. It's just going to take time.
No, there's a kid who's I think still at the top of the Rivals list of transfers, and that Maxim Rard from Stanford. I think we still have him ranked number 1. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think he'll remain there when I get the next group, when I stretch it out to 100 or 125.
What are we seeing from him? Why is he such a highly regarded transfer?
I just love his game. I mean, I watched some film and then I circled back again. And I watched him against Arizona. I mean, he's a legit 3-point shooter. At 7 foot. He has a good feel for the game. He didn't make the dunk. He got fouled, but if he had made it, he would have ruined Jaden Bradley's week. I mean, it would have been all over Twitter. It's kind of amazing sometimes when you watch some of these players who are really good and they get very little national attention. Nobody talked about him because Stanford wasn't winning this year. And, but he has he'll have to get a little stronger, but he's just everything you'd want in a college center. He goes inside, he goes outside, he's fluid. He's not going to block 5-6 shots, but I mean, he's okay on defense. He's just skilled. He's not the typical Euro where he doesn't poke his nose inside. He'll get some post ups, but the fact that at his size to be able to do what he can, I find it impressive. I think he has a legit chance of making the NBA somehow, some way. I'm not going to predict what round. I like to think he'll be a first rounder, but That's a little above my pay grade. But I mean, it goes back to what I said before, though. I mean, he's done it at the highest levels. He's basically a 15-10 guy in the Pac-12. So to me, that should translate to wherever school, there's probably only a handful of schools that are going to have a center that's better than him. Way I look at it, like if you got a center that's better, then you're in a really good position. So to me, he's the Hunter Dickinson or the Grant Nelson of this year's class, who is ready-made to go somewhere and do big things.
Everybody seems to want him. And do you have a feel for a kid like that who's so highly sought after, how much he's going to cost? It seems like he's going to be a pretty expensive.
Well, it goes back to what I said before, where point guards and centers are probably the ones that are really in demand. So, I mean, if someone wants to overpay, they'll overpay. I mean, the thing that's until collectives go away and the schools control the money, and I'm sure that day is coming soon at some point, it'll be interesting to see like how the market gets set. Because obviously some years, some schools are going to have money and then the next year they may not. So for guys like him, it's just striking while it's hot with the right program at the right time. He's from Paris, so I'm sure he probably didn't even grow up watching much college basketball. Maybe he did, I don't know. But I'm sure it wasn't something that he grew up on. And he picked Stanford, so that tells you he's all about, what academics means to him. So it'll be interesting to see. I just know that whoever gets him, like that's a big difference maker. That's the kind of guy that can get you into the Sweet 16, that can get you into the Elite Eight, because he is that good.
I watch a lot of service academy basketball. The Air Force had a kid who's in the portal now, right? As betrayed us. What kind of player is he? First of all, what position does he play, and what kind of player is he?
I kind of like him as a 3. Could he be a small ball 4? Maybe. He's not going to really rebound like a small ball 4 would, but he's very productive. His shot is not the smoothest, but it goes in. Like, I don't know, like, I'm sure if technical shooters, if they watch him, they would be able to point out this or that. Like, I don't know if he's the smoothest 3-point shooter, but he has a very good percentage. It was interesting. The leading scorer for Air Force last year transferred to Clemson, and they ended up redshirting him this year. So that kind of puts me on a little bit of a pause sometimes when I see things like that happen. Is it that much of a jump to go from, Air Force to the ACC? Because I actually think Clemson probably could have used him, but then maybe they'll like him more next year with 2 years left or whatever amount of years left, multiple seasons left, in a full-time role. But, I watched him and I had to circle back on him. He's one of those guys where I watched it and sometimes you get an instinct and then you have to watch it again. And he was just one of those guys where I had to watch him a few times because he kind of grows on you. He's not flashy. There's nothing wow about him. He's just a good, solid, productive college basketball player.
I got one more guy on my list, JC, and then I'm going to ask you about, who else you think might fit at Illinois, and maybe some names that haven't popped up in the portal yet that we might see here in the next few days. But Xavier Amos from NIU, from Northern Illinois, seemed to be a little bit forgotten coming out of Whitney Young. He ended up playing for NIU, and now he's in the portal. Athletic kid with some size. Do you see him as a legit high major kid?
Yes, I do. And you would probably know more than me on what would have happened if he was still unsigned after his senior year, if that would have changed the trajectory of his college choice. Because I assume he probably signed with Northern Illinois early. But what I saw with him is, he's a long 6'7" ish. He can hit the 3. He has a little nice touch game, around 8 to 10 feet. The one chink I saw with him is not the greatest free throw shooter. I think he ended up somewhere around 64-65% this year. So he'll have to improve that. But, he's just a very solid inside outside. It goes back to what I said earlier, where there's a lot of small ball 4s. they're all over the place. And he kind of fits into that category where he's plug and play. He can come in and he could be the power forward for a high major and just be a real solid guy who probably gets 12, 13 points and, 5, 6, 7 rebounds. I don't know if he'll explode into being like a 20-point per game guy, but then I'm sure if you asked me a year ago, I would have said Damask would not have had the year that he had for Illinois. So, coming off of Southern Illinois. But, that Northern Illinois team was a fascinating team to watch because, the point guard, David Coit, has productive a year that no one even knows about. Like it's hard to be an anonymous 20, 21 point per game scorer, but that's what Coit was at Northern Illinois. And then the other guy who's in the transfer portal, who's kind of like the forgotten guy because he blew out his knee, is Williams, Keyshawn Williams. He's 17 points a game. And, he's a legit, probably high major kid too, when he's healthy. So you could see what Northern Illinois almost had, if not for injuries. But that's kind of like the story of the portal is if you dig deep enough and you see Keyshawn Williams' video from a year ago before he hurt his knee, you see, okay, he could be a plug and play, shooting guard or a combo guard. Or if you watch David Coit play against DePaul and just shred him, I think he had like 8 threes, scored 30 plus, you can see like, okay, David Coit's probably going to end up somewhere, and this is Northern Illinois. Like people haven't talked about Northern Illinois since maybe Kenny Battle played for them. It's been a while.
You know that guy.
Yeah, I've heard of Kenny, So, I know they've had a few good teams over the years, but that's been, a place that's been hard to win at. But it just shows that guys just pop up. And, if schools look for certain things, I think they'll find them. But the reality is most of the guys are very good role players. They're guys who can come in, they get their 10, 11, 12 points, they hit their threes, they play smooth, they play smart. They're older guys. Obviously, the schools that really, really want to win big, they want to pop a star, they want to get, a big time player. Well, I mean, those guys cost money, a lot of money. So it will be fascinating. I'm sure, there's all kinds of guys for Illinois to get if they really want certain positions. Just to me, you would know way more than me on the position of basketball of Illinois. It's been 2 years without a traditional point guard. So if they want to keep going that way, then they'll have to find players that kind of fit that look, who are taller, who have some sort of passing background, even though they're not traditional point guards. And then obviously guys with size, they just stand out, period. I mean, you and I talked a little bit offline, like Dane Donja is going to have a market, just because he's big and he has had good games in the past. Just for that, you could see how he'll have a very good market on the, I saw he's visiting Memphis, I guess, but there'll be market for those guys. There always is. I mean, that big men are always a rarity. But what I am fascinated to see is what approach they'll have at the point guard spot.
Same here. I do think they want a guy who can be a primary ball handler, a veteran, proven veteran. But they're going to be very active in the portal. They got 5 coaches working the portal now. It used to be 3. You added 2 assistant coaches and 6 if you count head coach Brad Underwood. So they're going to throw a bunch of names up on the wall and see what sticks. And it's going to be interesting to see how the dominoes fall here in the next few days or a few weeks. But those are the names I had on my list. JC, what are some names kind of in the back of your mind do you think might be a good fit for Illinois?
I haven't given it like too much thought. If they want, I mean, it really just comes down to what they want. I'll give you for instance, someone in the Big Ten is probably going to get this center named Andrew Morgan from North Dakota State. He's from the Minneapolis area. He grew up on a farm. He made a name for himself in high school because once upon a time he battled Chet Holmgren pretty good. And that was when Chet was at the highest of his high school powers. Before he went to Gonzaga and made the NBA. So Morgan wasn't exactly a sleeper in high school. It just, he wasn't one of those guys who was driven to go to the biggest school possible. But we're talking about a grown man. I mean, he's 6'10", 250. You know, he can hit threes. He can dunk on people. You know, he's got that grown man strength inside. You know, and he's a guy that clearly is probably not going to leave the Midwest. You know, maybe he will, but you know, everything about him sounds like somebody who would be, you know, want to be somewhere close to Minneapolis. So I could see him being a target of Big Ten schools. You know, it would be fascinating to see in terms of the different point guards. You know, one of the guys that I've enjoyed watching, and he's probably one of the most unique stories, Texas San Antonio of all places. His name is Ivy Curry, Jordan Ivy Curry. Didn't start. Came off the bench. Something like 19, 20 points in 27 minutes or 29 minutes of action. Went to Texas San Antonio for 2 years, transferred to Pacific, then came right back to Texas San Antonio. And his coach is somebody that Illini fans way back when kind of will remember. It was who just got fired was Steve Henson, who I always joke is basically the son that Lon Kruger, you know, would have always wanted. You know, that was you don't get more son in the realm of a son than Steve Henson and Lon Kruger in their relationship going back to Kansas State. But, you know, very unique situation where here's a guy that he's probably wants to prove once and for all he's a good player. He's got 1 year left. You know, that's the type of guy that schools will get. I don't think he'll break the bank either. You know, but those are the stories that I always look as, you know, where will guys like that end up? Because I think he's good. You know, I watch some of these guys that are in the SWAC of all places. You know, Jackson State has a guard that's really good. Southern had a guard that was good. Arkansas Pine Bluff has a guard. So, I mean, I watch all these guys and like these guys get buckets, you know, and you and I, we watch Illinois or whoever play these teams that are basically there to get paid. You know, that's what November and December is. So I always say, like, watch who Illinois played in the past, because that's the best scouting of all. Not only did he scout those kids going into the game, then I watched them play live. So sometimes you see schools circle back on players that they played against in that November, December period, you know, that go to small school U. So it wouldn't surprise me if Illinois saw something in one of those games back when. But that's just kind of how I look at it. And like I said, then there's definitely those guys who went to big schools and it just didn't work out, or they're a little impatient. You know, they're clearly talented. They got ranked high in high school. They should be good, but until they are good, you just don't know for sure. There'll be a lot of those guys, you know, in the portal too. They just have to make sure that their second choice, it pays off for them.
Well, we're gonna wrap this, Jacey, and thanks for helping us break down this three-ring circus or Wild West or whatever analogy you want to use for it. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your day job covering NC State. What a great story that is, and what's the feeling with the fan base there at NC State heading into the Final Four?
Well, you know, it's almost been like playing with house money since the ACC tournament for the fans. You know, the fact that they were able to beat Duke and UNC in the same ACC tournament, you know, that made their year. So that was just the ACC tournament. I do think there is something about good matchups in the brackets. You know, playing Texas Tech was a good matchup. Getting Oakland in the second round, that helped. You know, I wondered about Marquette, but Marquette didn't play well. You know, they did not play well. And then they basically took on Duke again, and second half was complete domination, which was surprising. But, you know, it took on a lot of the same traits of the ACC tournament game. So all of a sudden, you have a 9-game winning streak. There is, you know, 9 games ago, Kevin Keatts would have probably been let go as coach. You know, he wins the ACC tournament. He gets a 2-year contract extension. Now he makes the Final Four. You know, so I mean, it shows you how fast. Like I've seen teams do it and then kind of fall apart in the NCAA tournament. I remember Georgia did it with Dennis Felton years and years and years ago in the SEC tournament. where they won it miraculously, and he was able to keep his job. But then they would lose in the NCAA tournament. So, so you have that dynamic. Then the women make the NCAA Final Four too. And then just on top of all that, I have a wedding coming up. So, and a spring game for football. So things are a little crazy right now, but this will definitely be a March and April to remember.
It's good to be Jacey Zembal. So
Well,
that's a
it's
wrap, Jacey.
tired right now. It's a tired Jacey Zembal.
And same here, with Minneapolis, Omaha, and then 6 days in Boston. So
Yeah.
I wish Illinois was
Well,
still playing, but I am glad to get some sleep.
I've always said this though. If you're gonna lose to the team that's like a UConn. Like
No
like
doubt.
I'm sure there's frustration still about losing to Loyola of Chicago. So there's losing that way. And then there's losing to a team like UConn, who you just know is they should be the runaway favorite in the Final Four. So there's no shame in losing to UConn. I mean, people might not have liked how the game went, but they clearly have been the best team. So I've always said, that if you're going to exit the NCAA tournament, at least do it against a great team, which is why I've never really been scared of that 8-9 game. Like if you're going to make the NCAA tournament, you win your 8-9 game and you play the number 1 seed. Man, there's no shame there. But yeah, I think history is going to be very kind on that UConn squad. So that's how I kind of looked at it. But it was a little bit of a shock though to see Illinois not score for such a long time.
I don't think I've ever seen a 30-0 run in college basketball
No.
before. That team is they're loaded. They have everything: size, speed, shooting, rebounding. I mean, they're just. I compared them to the 1990 UNLV on our side when I was talking to the fans. It's a team that can just overwhelm you with their speed and athleticism, and just a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Illinois ran into him at the wrong time. But thanks again, JC. We won't take up any more of your time, but thanks for taking time to talk to us. Make sure you're following JC, constantly putting out new kids that are entering the portal at Rivals Portal. Until next time, this is Doug Bouchon, Orange and Blue News. Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Mm. Mm.